Joe was released in 1970. This is directed by John G. Avildsen, written by Norman Wexler, and we have a cast including Dennis Patrick, Audrey Caire, Susan Sarandon, and Peter Boyle. It's because of Peter Boyle that I became aware of this. Decided to watch it, and in general, it's not too bad. I think the narrative's a little slow in places, but the character writing is brilliant, and I do think it's one that's worth watching. At the start of the film, Bill accidentally kills his daughter's boyfriend. Her daughter is in hospital, having taken drugs, and he goes to her boyfriend's apartment to get some of her belongings and accidentally kills him. And he is kind of panicking about this, but he goes down to the bar and happens to mention that he just killed this drug dealer. And Joe hears this and becomes really interested in this. And it turns out that Joe really doesn't like that kind of person. So he thinks that Bill has kind of done a good deed almost for taking a drug dealer off of the streets, which is, I don't think, a unique opinion. It's quite an interesting perspective for the character of Joe, because I feel like a lot of people will share that view. I'm not necessarily saying that's the most helpful perspective to have, but if you've been wronged or hurt by somebody who deals drugs, maybe you've lost a loved one because they dealt them drugs. Obviously, somebody also always has the choice to start taking drugs, but the point there is that I can understand that there are people like Joe who would think, well, it wasn't a life worth living anyway. You've just taken somebody off of the streets. You've done us a good service. Bill doesn't necessarily feel that way, but the more he spends time with Joe and the more they bond, maybe he starts to rub off on him, and maybe Bill starts to see things a little differently. And Joe is certainly quite interesting because on the one hand, he's saying, a horrible thing, like, you've just killed somebody, but look who it was. So what does it matter? But at the same time, I feel like he's reflecting the opinions of a lot of people. So it's quite an interesting experience in that regard. And I don't want to say what happens, but I will say that having this opinion, Joe's opinion there, and constantly kind of telling Bill this, or kind of encouraging Bill to feel that way, is going to be a recipe for disaster. And I'll say no more than that. I think it addresses a really important topic. And I think it does a good job of showing that Joe maybe doesn't have the right attitude. I don't think it's ever the right attitude to say that somebody is worth killing, that was the right thing to do. And I don't think Bill ever truly feels that way. But certainly the more time he spends with Joe, things do start to change. And I won't say exactly what happens, but I believed it. I fully believe that this could turn out this way, the way the film develops. And that in itself is quite a scary thought. So I think there's a lot of substance to the narrative. I think it has a lot to offer. I think the character writing is very strong. Bill is very believable. He and Joe are, in a lot of ways, quite different people. And I think that works really well with them spending time together. And the way that Joe affects Bill, I thought, was very effective. The performances there are very, very strong as well. I'd say I don't want to say it's an easy watch, but it's not the most challenging watch for the most part, but there are some scenes that are quite strong, quite difficult to watch with the actions and the attitudes, and it does get quite emotional on a couple of occasions. So I'd say it's a very strong film, and it is interesting to look at Joe and think, well, your attitudes are unhelpful, but also I believe that this would be the attitude of many people, and that's uncomfortable to watch, and I think that it's really important that it's highlighting that. So I think the film does quite an important job with this storytelling, and I think it's something that everybody should watch. It's maybe not the most engaging all of the way through from every single scene, but for the most part there's enough there to keep it interesting. We have some solid performances, some really moving moments, and definitely some very interesting, thought-provoking and troublesome perspectives. Joe is a strong film, and if it sounds like the kind of film for you, or if you're just curious to see what it's like, then I'd say it's one that's worth watching.